Why are just snatches of the Henderson Brooks report being put out, that too by foreign journalists? This is a matter that concerns India, it concerns all of us Indians. This is military history that Indians need to be learning from. Why instead are we seeing a foreign journalist leak only snatches? Why can't the entire report be declassified? It's been 52 years since the 1962 war. And is the government keeping the report under wraps just to protect the legacy of the Gandhi-Nehru family? Joining us on this broadcast this evening, I want to begin by introducing one of India's most venerated journalists who covered this war very, very closely, who was in fact in the thick of things in the 1960s, Kuldeep Nayyar, one of India's most respected journalists, joining us on this broadcast. Also with us, we've got Wajahat Habibullah, former chief of the Information Commission. He is a man who, in fact, apart from being one of India's most respected bureaucrats, has looked at this report, has considered whether it needs to be made public, and at that time had recommended that partially report needs to be made public. But even at that time, the Indian government didn't do so. Also with us, Lieutenant General Satish Nambiar, and we're in fact very, very fortunate to have people with us who've studied this report at great length, know what its contents are, have so far been constrained from speaking in public because the report was never out in the public domain, and now it's come out in the public domain for the first time through an Australian journalist. Nirmala Sitharaman, representing the BJP on this broadcast, national spokesperson for the party. Amibain Yagnik, representing the Congress. Bharat Verma, one of India's foremost strategic affairs experts, and my colleague Sandeep Punithanan, who works with India Today magazine. I want to go across first to Amibain Yagnik. Ms. Yagnik, why is it that the government is not revealing the contents of this report? We are seeing bits and snatches being put out by foreign journalists. This is India's military history. Why is it that it can't be made public? I want to first put that question to Kuldeep Nayyar. So you've looked at this report for so long. Do you accept the government's contention that this will damage and impact India's negotiations with China, and therefore the report shouldn't be made public? Do you accept what the government is saying, sir?
No, I don't. In fact, I tried to get this report public. I went to RTI, and also Mr. Wajahatullah, who is sitting there, he rejected my plea that it should not be made public. I have now filed my petition in the High Court, and it's still lying there.
You've been crusading very hard, and you went across to Mr. Habibullah. In fact, we're fortunate to have Mr. Habibullah also on this broadcast as somebody who's been in charge, who's been the information czar of this country. Why is it that India and Indians need to depend on a foreign journalist who's putting out bits and snatches of this report? Why did you not accept Kuldeep Nayyar's plea when he says India's military history needs to be debated and discussed, even if there are political consequences, even if ruling families are presented in bad light, it needs to be out in the public domain, Mr. Habibullah?
Yes, there is certainly an argument that is there. And I myself have often questioned myself, but the decision was taken after very weighted arguments. It's not correct that this is the first time these disclosures have been made. You know that Neville Maxwell had published his book, India-China War 1962, which was in fact disclosed the substance of what has now been disclosed. It was also based on the Henderson Brooks report, and you know that at that time it was banned in India, but many people, of course, including I'm sure Mr. Kuldeep Nayyar, have had access to that work. The question really arose. I'll tell you the reasons why we decided not to disclose. We did go through the report. Mr. Sharma and I constituted the bench of the Information Commission. At the request of the Defence Ministry, they did not want to send us the report. We could have asked for it in our office, but we agreed that since it's a security matter, we would go ahead to Defence Headquarters. And they must compliment the Defence Headquarters. They gave us a very thorough and exhaustive disclosure of what was in the report. We also had the report before us. What has been disclosed is only a few hundred pages of the report. In fact, the report constitutes thousands of pages with its annexures and enclosures. It is a fat report. Both Mr. Sharma and I, we divided it between ourselves and went through the report. And ultimately, we came to the conclusion that it could not be disclosed. I'll tell you the reasons also. The question was that the issues that are discussed in that report, the borders with China, these are still very live issues. These are open to negotiation. That is one. The second thing was that they, in our view, it would undermine the morale of the army. Now that may be because of my own personal aptitudes. I'm the son of a general. Many of the people mentioned there by name were people who I had called uncle, so maybe that was the reason. But then there is another reason. It certainly concerns relations with a foreign state. Under the Right to Information Act, the information that concerns relations with a foreign state is also exempt from disclosure. So these were some of the reasons. But if I may elaborate on that a little, I was of the view, and this we argued very thoroughly, that should we go for partial disclosure? We then came to the conclusion, and this was of course the view of the army headquarters also, that no, there should not be even a partial disclosure, because in our own defense preparedness, we may think, as amateurs, we may think that the disclosure would not in any way compromise our defense arrangements, but they were of the view that it would. And therefore, in the interest of national security, in the interest of relations with a foreign state, we finally came to the conclusion that it should not
Mr. Kuldeep Nayyar, before I bring the other guests into this debate, do you accept... One second, Mr. Habibullah, you've made some points. Okay, go on, complete your argument, sir.
Before I finish, let me just finish. I do realize that this decision made me quite unpopular with many of my friends, and Kuldeep Nayyar, like yourself, I have been a long admirer of and a great friend of. He, of course, was very miffed with me for that decision. And another friend, Mr. A.G. Noorani, who you know has done a great deal of research on Indo-China relations and the borders of China, who earlier was in fact a very warm friend, unfortunately cooled off as a result. So that decision did cost me.
But one second, this, Mr. Habibullah, with respect, is not about, you know, uncles and aunts. This is not about personal friendships and personal equations. This is far more serious. This is India's military history, a troubled period in our nation, you know, a new nation having to take such a big military blow, and we need to learn the lessons. Unless the report comes out in the public domain, how will we ever learn those lessons? Before I bring the other guests in, I want to go across to Kuldeep Nayyar, who's challenging and fighting with Mr. Habibullah on the two crucial points that were made by Habibullah. One, that the border is still a live issue with China, and there could be consequences on India's defense preparedness, because we don't know, even if the report is partially revealed, which aspects have operational consequences. Mr. Kuldeep Nayyar, how do you respond to the arguments laid out by Wajahat Habibullah, sir?
See, our border dispute with China is many years old, and it is going to be there. So it has nothing to do with the border. This war of 1962 is 52 years old. Weapons have changed, tactics have changed, operation is different. So I do not know why the government of India is reluctant to make the report public. And if this is the morale of the army would be lowered, I do not know how it would be, because in fact those soldiers who fought there had no shoes, and it should come out before the public that how they fought on the border.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And